people are having sex and sleeping around wherever you live, but in the South or the Southern Christian culture that I grew up in, you didn't talk about it.
What's going on, fam? It's your boy, Anthony O'Neill. Welcome back to the table where, guess what? Well, y'all need to guess, because you already know we keep it real, relatable, and
relevant.
My boy's back in the building. Yes. So y'all listen. I had the opportunity to be on a podcast with a lady to where she's been featured in Forbes. She's been featured on all kind of things. Y'all, but this lady right here is a sexless lady in the city of New York where they having a bunch of ungodly intimacy. But she's saying, nah, that's not your girl. And so I'm pumped because I said, you know what? I want you on my show. I want you to come and talk to my people and really, let's just talk about you, your life, and your experience. So, fam, can y'all help me welcome my girl to the table, Kat? Kat, what's going on, sis?
Wow, Anthony. Oh, my gosh. First of all, watching you do an intro was inspiring. I mean...
Let's go back to when you was like 18, 19 years old.
Okay.
Where were you living? What was going on in your life?
So my whole life goal was to get a full ride athletic scholarship to a Division I school to play tennis. I knew from a very early age that if I ever wanted to go to college, I would need a full ride scholarship. And I fell in love with tennis at a very young age.
Wow.
I didn't come from a lot of money. I grew up with a lot of adversity. So getting that scholarship to college was really huge for me. It was, wow, this is this goal that I've worked towards for such a long, long time. Tennis was really my first love. And so it was kind of this dream come true season for me. But also around the time I was 18, I also kind of accidentally became a Christian.
Oh, accidentally.
Oops.
How do you accidentally become a Christian? I got to ask that question.
Right. Well, maybe accident for me. So the people that I partied with on the weekends invited me to go to church camp with them. And I thought, man, all the hot guys are going. So yeah, I want to go. And, good logic there.
I like it.
And so I go to this church camp and honestly, from the very first night, God was just opening my heart. And I remember going back to the room the first night with my best friends and saying, I feel as though I have been living life for me.
Yeah.
And I think there's a lot more. I think God might be real. And their response was, oh yeah, that's just church camp. And when we go back home, we still party and do all the things. So don't worry, we can, have your camp high. And I just remember going to bed being like, I'm not sure. And then by the end of the week, I was like sold out. I love Jesus. I got baptized.
Yeah.
I called my grandparents. I was like, guess what? I'm a Christian. And I came home. My family thought I was crazy. I was reading my Bible all the time. I was just this totally new person who I felt so in love with God. And in that place, I went to college pursuing this full ride athletic scholarship that I've been working my whole life for. And my world kind of turned upside down. This sport that I loved so much became such a source of pain for me. I had a really abusive coach and tried to transfer, but couldn't get released from my scholarship. And so there was a bunch of NCAA stuff going on there. And I really hurt my back. And I would have to be like carried off and on the court. And the whole goal was just for me to get playable. And so after kind of 2.5 years of that, I was just at this place where I was so burnt out of this thing that had brought me so much life for so much of my life. And finally, I was kind of at my breaking point. And, long story short, a bunch of different little things happened. And I found myself walking away from a full ride scholarship into a 45,000 student school to transferring to a small Christian school with 3,000 people, becoming a Bible major. I was one of the only women in my major because I was in the South, land of like Baptist land where,
Wow.
girls go to college to get their MRS degree and, girls don't really speak in church. So that's cute that you're getting your little Bible major, pat, pat, pat on the head. So yeah, my 18 to kind of 20 was a lot of shifting. And then there's the whole other layer of family stuff going on at that time. My dad was a drug addict and really completely out of my life at that time. So kind
So,
of yeah, go ahead.
no. I was thinking because you got saved accidentally because you wanted to follow some good-looking guys, which
That's
I
right.
ain't mad at that, because I think a lot of guys can say the same thing. I went to camp because I wanted to see this good-looking girl. So,
That's right.
so I could see that, but it seemed like God worked in you.
Yeah.
Because you eventually ended up going to school to learn more and to dive deeper into His Word to really become a strong Christian. And I find it interesting that you are a Christian in New York City. And I know about New York. I'm not saying not all the people in New York City are just heathens and just going to hell. I'm not saying that. But I do got to ask this question because
Yeah.
New York City is the party city. There's a lot of things that's going on in New York City. How does it feel to be a Christian in New York City?
Yeah, that's such a good question, Anthony. It feels great.
Nah.
I love being a person of faith, a woman of faith in a city like New York.
Mm-hmm.
The reason why I moved to New York, a huge reason. So, I go from Bible major to graduating. I went into the nonprofit world and then got into the photography world, started my own editorial photography business, moved to New York to be an editorial photographer. So that's kind of a little bit of how the breadcrumbs of how I got to New York.
Okay.
But I was so excited to leave the bubble of Christian culture in the South. And, there's a theologian and philosopher, Kierkegaard, and he calls it like the crowd Christian, or it's like where everyone's a Christian, no one's a Christian. And even though I didn't grow up in a Christian home, Christianity was the air I breathed. It was like that scent when you walk into your parents' house that you don't know your parents' house smells like something until you leave and come back. And you're like, oh, what is that? And then you're there for a few seconds and then it just disappears because you're used to it again. I didn't realize how much of a bubble I was in. I was at a Christian school. I worked at a church, and then I moved to Southern California right after college, which Orange County, California is the second Bible Belt. So people would be like, wow, you moved to California. It's so liberal there. And I was like, this is the most Republican, conservative, white place I've ever lived in. So really for me, moving to New York was this resolve that I had to really get outside of my comfort zone. And, I had this picture that New York City is sort of this pulse, this heartbeat of Western culture. It's where the best of the best of the best in the US go, at least. So, that's the epicenter of the finance world. It's the epicenter of the fashion industry, which is the industry I was in at the time. And I believed still that, if you can make an impact to the influencers, if you can influence the influencers, that influence is going to pulsate throughout our entire culture.
Yeah.
So for me, going to New York was exciting to finally be like, I want to be a minority in my worldview.
Wow.
Because really that's like the world isn't Christian.
Wow. Yeah.
And America isn't quote unquote Christian. And also Jesus lived this life where he was constantly surrounded by people who didn't believe what he believed, who would never step foot inside a church. And so I just felt like, man, I want my life to be reflective of the life of Jesus. And so if the only people I hang out with believe what I believe, talk like I talk, dress like I dress, then I am really living a lot more like the Pharisees or the religious elite as opposed to the life of Jesus. So I think that felt exciting. And then also to be a Christian in New York is hard. It's not convenient.
Now, I was just about to ask you that. You saying you love it, but how is it hard in New York? And I want to ask you two questions. Is it
Yeah.
hard to be a Christian in New York? And is it hard to live below your means in New York? I need to know both of those questions.
Yes.
So, like, can you do both? Or can you only do one? Or can you not do either? What's your honest opinion to those two questions?
Yeah. Well, I think to be a human in New York City is a hard thing. It's not whatever you believe about life or God, you are thrust into this city where there's very little greenery.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of frenetic energy. There's taxi cabs at all hours of the day. In New York City, you are what you do. So, working 100-hour work weeks is glorified. Everyone has their job and then their side hustle and then their investments on the side. And so I think what felt hard for me about being a Christian was I moved to New York City and didn't realize all of these sort of narratives I had grown up believing because Christianity was cultural, like Christians don't have sex outside of marriage. Good Christians don't live with their boyfriends if they're not married. And then I moved to New York where no one knows the quote unquote rules because it's not the culture.
Come on.
And so I'm in small groups at church and girls are talking about how they're sleeping around, having casual sex. And part of that was refreshing because people are having sex and sleeping around wherever you live. But in the South or the Southern Christian culture that I grew up in, you didn't talk about it.
You're right. Right.
So I felt like, oh, wait, is this really what God wants us to do? Or is this some sort of antiquated Christian norm that's no longer relevant? So really the hard parts of it are really what caused me to press into God and seek the scriptures of, what is it that I really believe? And what does the scriptures really say versus what are sound bites that I have received as gospel truth?
Wow.
So doing the work of unpacking what does scripture really say was hard and is hard. But I think growth happens as soon as we step outside of our comfort zone.
What? Say that again. Say that again.
Yeah, louder. Hold on.
Say it again. What you just say?
Growth happens the moment we step outside of our comfort zone.
Y'all have heard that before on this show. What do I say? You have to be willing to step outside your comfort zone because nothing extraordinary comes from within inside your comfort zone.
Yes,
and Kat,
absolutely.
Who is sexless in the great city of New York City, just said she had to step outside of her comfort zone.
That's right. So it's easy not to have sex when you live in a culture that shames sex outside of marriage.
Oh.
It's easy to have certain political beliefs when everyone and their mom believes a certain thing.
Kat, you talking.
It's easy to have thoughts about LGBTQ community when you have no one in your life that identifies as LGBTQ.
Yes.
So stepping outside of your house, your apartment, your tiny rat-infested apartment in New York City, every single day, I'm sitting on a subway next to a CEO, a homeless person, a Hasidic Jewish man who my very existence is immodest and sinful. And every single day I'm collided with humanity.
Yeah.
So is it hard?
Yeah.
Yes.
Yes.
But I think that it is so important to put myself in hard circumstances.
No, absolutely.
And in uncomfortable circumstances.
Kat, listen, Kat. You preaching my stuff on my show, and you've never been on my show before. Thank you so much. So, Kat, one of the things that I teach, I have a Christian base. So that's where I'm at. And I'll be the first person to tell you and anyone on my show, they know how I roll. I'm not perfect. I'm a real guy, and I'm flawed. But my foundation of my life is Christian. It is the Word of God. And the Word of God says to be a good steward of our resources. And when it comes to being a good steward of our resources, I believe that we have to live below our means and not spend every dime that we have. We should get out of debt. We should have a fully funded emergency fund. But one of the key things that I teach all the time is that, hey, no matter what, do not stretch yourself to where your rent or your mortgage payment is past 25% of your take-home pay. Yeah. Everyone in New York that I have talked to says that there is no way possible you can have roommates, and it's not possible to have rent less than almost $1,700 to $2,000 a month. $1,700 to $2,000 a month.
Well, that's just not true.
Okay, wait. I was about to ask you that because I remember from your show, you said it a little quickly, and I was like, wait a minute.
Yeah.
Wait. How much are you paying for rent in New York?
Yeah, so I pay $900 for rent in New York City.
Say it again. Wait, hold on a minute.
I pay $900 for rent in New York City. I've never paid more than $1,000. I have an incredible 3-bedroom, 2-story, central AC, central heater, office space. And I don't live, I also have a dishwasher. I have laundry in my building. So, these things in New York that are mega luxury. I don't live on Fifth Avenue.
Okay.
I live in Brooklyn.
Okay.
But I live in the part of Brooklyn that when people visit Brooklyn, they visit my neighborhood. I live in a very nice neighborhood. I don't live in a luxury building. But, that's just an excuse. New York is very expensive.
Absolutely.
However, when I moved to New York, I dropped a car payment. I dropped car insurance.
Wait. So how'd you get around? You took the sub?
You take the subway. I bike. I'm a big biker. There's City Bike. It's $15 a month for New Yorkers.
And you can bike. So you ride your bike from your house to where you do your podcast and stuff like that.
Yep. Yeah, so I podcast at Rockefeller Center typically. So 30 Rock, where the Christmas tree is. So it's about a 6-7 mile bike ride. I have my backpack. It's, I try, it's all about stewarding your time. And so if I'm a physically active person, so if I can get a workout in, then I'll bike. If I can do that, I'll do it. If not, I'll do the subway. But that's also one of the things that makes New York hard, right? Life is hard everywhere, but lifestyle.
Yeah.
I'm trying not to die on my bike as I get to work.
But from what I hear from yourself is, yes, New York is expensive, but it doesn't have to be expensive to you. You make the choices. You make the decisions on what you're going to do and how you're going to do it. And at the end of the day, it's going to require some form of sacrifice. And you were like, I'm willing to make the sacrifices so my rent and my living expensive is not as expensive.
I mean, when I first moved to New York, I know you and I have already talked about this, but I was new into running my own photography business. I worked for a guy for a lot of years in LA, started my own business. I was all high and mighty because I had all these connections from him.
Yeah.
And then I start my own business. I moved to New York, and guess what? It was crickets. It was really hard to rebuild my business. And I ended up sharing a bed with one of my best friends for 6 months in a tiny Brooklyn apartment. And I think I paid maybe $400 for rent at that time.
Wow.
But I those first few years, my last 7 years of my business have been quite interesting. 7 years ago, I was making less than $20,000 a year.
Okay. Wow.
And I think it was 2 years ago. So 5 years after that, I hit 6 figures for the first time.
And you're in your mid-30s?
I'm 35 now. Yeah. And so this year will be, I've continued to grow. But I mean, I was barely paying my rent, even though it was $400 a month. Yet here I am in the editorial world, having all these expenses of, I was a member at Soho House, which is this, kind of exclusive club for entrepreneurs. And I'm trying to book these mega big fancy clients, booking me at $1,000 an hour. And so I'm paying for their, drinks at our meetings where I'm showing them my work and trying to book stuff. And then I'm like, oh, I got to go home and eat ramen noodles because I cannot afford. So I was really conflicted, Anthony. I was, I could live underneath my means, but I was conflicted because I was trying to fake it till I make it and get these clients that I couldn't have them over to my apartment. That's, I was really struggling for a long time.
Do you think that's a problem within our generation of we go after the fake rich rather than building true wealth. We go after the fake it till you make it so we can impress people. But then we're the ones going home. We're going home to eat, beans and rice. We're trying to figure out how we're going to keep our lights on. I'm curious, in your opinion, you've recently paid off about $30,000 in debt. Hoorah. You are a young lady who's making six figures in her mid-30s. Hoorah. What would you say? Give me two things. Two things that you can contribute to your success now. As far as in you own some real estate, you paid off some debt, you are making good money, you have your own business, you're living in New York, you're not struggling. But for years you struggled, for years you fought, but today this is where you are. Give me two things that you would say that contributed to your success. And then also, was it even worth it, in your opinion?
Yeah. Oh, those are so good. And, people might not like my first response because it might seem a little elusive, but I know you talk about this a lot.
Yeah.
Is the first thing that had to change for me was my mindset. Okay. I mean, I had a poverty.
You can take over the show. Go ahead. Take over the show. God bless you. Come on, Kat. What?
I had a poverty mindset, a victim mentality. I felt like I'm a woman in a man's world. When I first started shooting New York Fashion Week 12 years ago now, I was one of two women in the pit.
Wow.
And I felt like I was not able to get jobs because it was a male locker room and they were referring each other jobs and not me. I felt like my femininity was a liability, not an asset. So guess what? Everything that did or didn't happen in my career proved that narrative to myself that I don't get the jobs I want. Yeah. I didn't believe I was worth booking $1,000 an hour clients.
Yeah.
I felt a victim to my circumstances. And then I didn't even realize I had a mental block financially.
Wow.
I had always been a survivor. My childhood, I was a survivor in my family, lots of drama, lots of dysfunction. And I prided myself on that. I'm a survivor. And I remember waking up one day in New York City 7 years ago, and I paid my rent. And I said, oh, thank you, God, I survived another month. And in that moment, God was like, what if you didn't have to survive? What if you could thrive? And I had honestly never even thought of that because my whole life I'd been treading water. And so when you're just treading water and surviving, that feels like a win. And I felt like God gave me this picture of not treading water in a tumultuous ocean anymore, but being on solid ground. And God was like, what if you were on solid ground? What if the big win wasn't I paid my rent this month? What would your life look like then? And then around that same time, one of my girlfriends said, I had never made even close to six figures. And she was like, you are in your own way. And I realized, you know what? I always thought as a kid, if I could just make $100,000 a year, I will have made it. So I never looked past that. And so I could never reach past it.
Yeah.
And she said, you are a CEO of a business. You should be making $250K minimum a year.
Come on.
And I thought, oh, that's ridiculous. I don't need that much money. People that make $250,000 plus a year, their lives are filled with drama. They have to make all this money just so that they can pay their team. And she said, or not.
She was getting into that mindset, Kat. She was like, you got to change that mind, shawty.
Yes.
Come on.
And I was like, that's weird and woo-woo. What do you mean mindset? And I was like, that's true though. God says to take every thought captive. And this isn't a health, wealth, prosperity gospel. This is believing that it's possible that I could be financially stable and successful, that my femininity could actually be my biggest asset, as opposed to the thing that I use as an excuse as to why I'm not making more money, as to why I'm not getting more jobs. And so really my breakthrough in my financial growth and stability happened when I changed my mind.
Come on. You were
So that was the number
CEO.
one thing.
What's number two?
Number two is number two was really, like you said, I didn't have debt before I moved to New York City.
You did?
I was debt free. Like I said, I had a full ride scholarship to college and then for athletics. And then when I transferred, I was 75% academic scholarship. So I left college with $6,000 debt, paid it off in a couple months, even though I was making $7 a day at my first job after college. That's another story. But moving to New York, I started, I thought this is a really expensive city. So I was letting these narratives sort of dictate my life. Oh, I do have to fake it till I make it. I do need to buy the expensive membership to the club. I need to take my high rolling clients I need to be spending, $25 on cocktails for them so that they'll book me. And kind of slowly, I started racking up this debt, but there was always an excuse. It was always, this is for my business. And it was, well, I didn't get in school debt. So this is my investment into my career. I needed new gear. So instead of renting a lens for $20 every time I rented it, I could afford that, I would buy the lens.
Yeah.
And so pretty soon, a couple years ago, I was in close to $30,000 worth of debt.
Wow.
And I remember being like, what the heck happened?
Wow.
How did I get here?
Yeah.
And I felt crippled by it. I couldn't think of, so I had, by that point, had my financial breakthrough of I can make money. But then it was like, I was making money and it wasn't going anywhere. I would pay off my credit card every month, but my interest was so high that I wasn't making any headway on it. So really, until I started to take my debt seriously, I couldn't grow. And so my goal, and what I also realized, Anthony, is, here I am single. I'm praying for this godly husband. I'm praying, God, just bless him, protect his mind, give him mentors in his life. And I realized underneath some of that, I was also praying for a financial savior.
Wow.
I was like, maybe I don't have to be as smart with my money because homeboy will have had a good, stable job this whole time. So he can swoop in and pay off my debt. And God really convicted me. He's like, you're not looking for a spouse, you're looking for a sugar daddy. And I kind of was.
She was looking for a sugar daddy.
Sometimes I
gotta ask you this
it would be
on
really
the show
nice.
because here's the thing: you gotta keep it real on this show. You still looking for a sugar daddy today?
I'm looking for a partner.
Okay.
I am looking for an equal. I am looking for someone who is seeking God, who has integrity in his life. And what I realized in that is if I want someone who is financially stable, guess what? I get to be that first.
Ooh, there you go. So she's not looking for no sugar daddy. And I like it. So our time is running up. And we got to get you back on the show because you have a book coming out. Down the road. We can't really say too much about it, but what's the title of your book? Can we talk about that?
Oh, we can talk about the title. We can even talk about, we can dig in there a little bit.
We got like 2 minutes. So give us a little snapshot of what the book is going to be about because I already know what time it is. You ain't just looking for a godly man. But you're looking for a man who's saying you ain't getting no sex until we get married. It's sexless over here. So what's the title of your book?
So, well, first I always say, I'm like, you know what? I just bring it back to Sierra. Sierra says, not my goodies. Not my goodies. So, you may think, but she's not coming home with me.
I see you, Kat. I see you.
Yeah, I'm just like, let's bring it back to some Sierra here.
Yeah.
So also Sierra and her now husband waited until marriage to have sex, which I think is super cool.
And one of my good friends, Devon Franklin and Megan Good, waited.
Oh my gosh.
As
I
well.
love them.
And he wrote a book on it. And so
that's right.
And it's amazing. It's absolutely amazing.
Yeah. I love their book. I wish I had it. It's over there, but it's so noted up that there's like things coming out of the side of it. I love their story. My book is called Sexless in the City, a sometimes sassy, sometimes painful, always honest look at dating, desire, and sex. So talk about a mouthful.
That's a mouthful.
Basically, what this book is sort of my story of leaving Southern Christian culture, coming to New York City. I had never had sex, waiting until marriage to have sex, but really had never questioned that. And then I moved to this crazy city where Christians, non-Christians alike, everyone's having sex. And I was like, hello, am I the only person here that is a prude? What's happening? And I also discovered another thing. It's a lot harder not to have sex when you're actually dating. And so I went through a breakup, and in that breakup realized I do not know why I'm waiting to have sex.
Wow.
All I know is I was given this set of rules growing up. Don't have sex. Be a good Christian girl. Don't have sex. If you have sex, you're bad.
Yeah.
And I just did not know what God's heart was.
Yeah.
So I just was like, I have to really figure out what I believe. What are shame narratives that I was given, and what's actually God's heart?
Yeah.
Because God is so much more concerned about our heart than behavior modification.
Hey, pause. Rewind. Say that again. Say that again.
God is so much more concerned about our heart than behavior modification. Now, does that mean it doesn't matter what I do or do not do? No, it just means that if there is an invitation to abstain from sex, there has to be a good reason for it. So I went on a journey where I researched every single verse in the Bible that talked about sex, intimacy, relationships, and what I thought would be like a 2-hour quiet time turned into a several-year journey of asking really hard questions about sex, sexuality, abstinence, gender roles, modesty, a lot of these narratives I had received growing up. And what I found in all of that, I thought I would leave that journey being like, I am going to have sex in my dating relationships moving forward.
Wow.
But I actually ended it more conservative than when I started.
Wow.
And so the big cosmic joke was on me. But the reality is now I am free. I before was a victim to expectation and rules. Yeah. And now I know why I'm making the decisions that I'm making in my relationships and intimacy and withholding sex and certain physical intimacy outside of marriage. I feel excited about it. Before it was like, I can't do this. I'm a Christian. And now I'm like, I am so excited to tell people about this. Why aren't we talking about this compelling God vision? Why are we just talking about rules? God has such a beautiful vision for sexuality and desire that is free from shame. Let's talk about that.
Yeah.
So that's my book.
Yeah, Kat, I'm pumped, y'all. I'm pumped. And we are definitely going to have you back on the show to talk about that, because I want to dive deep. I want to dive in deep. I believe this generation needs to hear that conversation. And I'm going to be real with you on my show. I needed that when I was a young kid, because I fell short because of my surroundings. I didn't grow up in a surrounding of don't have intimacy. I grew up in a surroundings of go do it if you want to be cool. And so I believe that your book is going to bless people. And so we definitely want to bring you back on the show next year when it comes out. But thank you so much. This conversation today has been fun. It's been, I love the energy. I just love your story, your life. And I'm praying for you. And so
thank you.
Thank you so much for rocking with us. Y'all, I'm going to drop Kat's information in the description below. Kat, where can my tribe connect with you, buy your book, listen to your podcast? How can we do it?
Yeah. Well, first, thank you so much for having me. I was nervous. Like my hands were sweating when we started recording. I was like, Anthony is like the Beyonce of financial gurus. And I am.
No, that's Dave Ramsey, not Anthony O'Neill.
I don't know if Dave's
I think you're a pretty big deal.
Dave's not the Beyonce. Nah, Dave's not the Beyonce. I don't want to be Beyonce. I'll be the Jay-Z.
Okay.
I was thinking Kevin Hart, but you can be Jay-Z.
I mean, I like Kevin Hart too. You know what I'm saying? That's my.
I mean,
love him.
Jay-Z and Beyonce are like the power couple.
They are.
You know?
They are.
You know, you'll say Jay-Z. You'll say Jay-Z. I cried when I saw Jay-Z in concert a few years ago. I was like, I love you so much. You're so amazing. And I just cried.
That's so funny.
But okay, where people can find me is on Instagram, The Refined Woman. That's also my website, The Refined Woman. My podcast drops every Wednesday. It's called The Refined Collective.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, I am, if you're single, I love talking to single people. You can go to bit.ly/TRW dating tips and join my community of single ladies and have a chat.
Yo, and we'll put all that information in the link below, so that way you can just click the link and follow her. I want you to follow her. I love her story.
Thanks.
I love her vision. I love her mission. And I love her ministry. So, y'all, it's your boy, everybody. Welcome Connor back to the building. And you already know what time it is. We keep it real. We keep it relatable. And we keep it
relevant.
There we go. Right here. Every single Monday at 8 a.m. So we'll see you next week. Peace out.